I'm Miranda, 34, once struggling but now a successful businesswoman. During my sister Rebecca's anniversary at an upscale restaurant, her husband Lawrence humiliated me saying, "We don't serve beggars here." The same family who abandoned me when I needed them most. I calmly excused myself, made a phone call, then returned with news. I was withdrawing my $1 billion investment from Lawrence's company. The room went silent as everyone realized the power dynamic had completely shifted. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever had family underestimate you, hit that like button. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound. But sometimes karma comes full circle in the most satisfying ways. Subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics being turned upside down when you least expect it. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, I always lived in the shadow of my older sister Rebecca. Our parents weren't wealthy, but they provided a comfortable life for us, with my father working as an accountant and my mother as a high school teacher. From an early age, it was clear who the favorite child was. Rebecca was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was often overlooked despite my efforts. Rebecca was conventionally beautiful, outgoing, and socially adept, everything our parents valued. I was more introverted, analytical, and creative. My academic achievements were treated as expected rather than celebrated. When I won the state science fair in 8th grade, my parents attended only because Rebecca had a minor role in a school play the same evening. They spent most of their time praising her 3-minute performance rather than my months of research. "Miranda always does well with her little projects," my mother would say dismissively to relatives. It wasn't that they were cruel, they simply didn't see me. Rebecca's achievements were extraordinary, mine were ordinary, regardless of their actual merit. In high school, I discovered my passion for business and entrepreneurship. I started a small online jewelry business that gained traction locally. When I excitedly shared my first month's profit, $300, at dinner, my father chuckled. "That's cute, honey. But you should focus on something practical for college. This little hobby won't pay the bills." Meanwhile, Rebecca was preparing for pre-med with full family support, though she barely maintained a B average. My straight A's in advanced business and economics courses received passing acknowledgement at best. When college application time came, I wanted to pursue business at Wharton. My parents balked at the idea. "Business is too competitive and cutthroat for someone like you," my father said. "You're too sensitive. Why not study education like your mother?" Despite their discouragement, I applied anyway and was accepted with a partial scholarship. I still remember my mother's response, "Well, I suppose you can always transfer to something more suitable if it doesn't work out." I worked 2 part-time jobs to cover the remaining tuition and expenses. Rebecca, meanwhile, attended an expensive private university with full parental support, though she switched majors 3 times before settling on communications. I excelled in college, graduating with honors and immediately securing a position at a startup tech company. I worked obsessively, learning everything I could about the industry while developing my own business concept on the side, a platform connecting small businesses with resources typically only available to large corporations. Just as I was preparing to launch my first serious venture at 25, Rebecca met Lawrence Taylor at a charity gala. Lawrence came from old money, his family owned Taylor Industries, a conglomerate with interests in real estate, technology, and manufacturing. He was handsome, charming, and dripping with the confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. Their whirlwind romance dominated family conversations for months. My parents were ecstatic about Rebecca's fortuitous match. When I called with updates about my business plans, they would listen politely for a minute before inevitably turning the conversation to Rebecca and Lawrence. "Did we tell you Lawrence is taking Rebecca to Paris next weekend?" On his family's private jet. 6 months later, they were engaged. The wedding was extravagant, $500,000 spent on a weekend celebration at the Taylor family estate. I served as bridesmaid, smiling through the ceremony while listening to relatives whisper about how Rebecca had made it and wondering when I would find someone successful like Lawrence. 2 months after the wedding, disaster struck. The economic recession hit, investors pulled out of my fledgling company, and within weeks, I lost everything. My small apartment, my car, even my professional wardrobe, all gone as I struggled to pay debts and keep afloat. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood and took whatever jobs I could find: waiting tables, freelance work, night shifts at a 24-hour grocery store. I was exhausted but determined to rebuild. During this time, I had a promising new business concept that could actually capitalize on the economic downturn. I needed just $5,000 for initial development and legal fees. After exhausting all other options, I swallowed my pride and approached my family. I still remember that dinner clearly. Rebecca and Lawrence had invited my parents to their newly purchased mansion, and I was included as an afterthought. I sat in their opulent dining room, surrounded by evidence of their wealth: original artwork, crystal glassware, a chandelier that probably cost more than all my possessions combined. Lawrence dominated the conversation with stories about his business triumphs and recent acquisitions. Rebecca showed off her latest jewelry purchases and plans for redecorating their vacation home. My parents beamed with pride at their successful daughter and son-in-law. When there was finally a lull in conversation, I carefully explained my situation and business plan, concluding with my request for a loan, not a gift, that I would repay with interest. The silence that followed was excruciating. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. My mother studied her plate. Rebecca looked embarrassed, as though I had done something socially unacceptable. Lawrence broke the silence with a condescending chuckle. "Miranda, business isn't for everyone. Some people just aren't cut out for the challenges. There's no shame in accepting that and finding a stable job. We're concerned about you, dear," my mother added softly. "Always these big dreams when you should be focusing on practicality." Rebecca reached over to pat my hand. "My friend's company is hiring administrative assistants. I could put in a word for you. The pay isn't much, but it's something stable." My father nodded in agreement. "That sounds perfect. You need stability, not more risk." I realized then that they had never believed in me. Not when I was a child with academic achievements, not when I was a teenager with entrepreneurial ambitions, not when I was a college graduate with a solid business plan, and certainly not now. In their eyes, I was perpetually the less capable daughter, the one who needed to lower her expectations. "So about the loan?" I pressed, though I already knew the answer. "We don't think that would be responsible," my father said firmly. "We're not going to fund another failure." Lawrence raised his wine glass. To practical decisions, he toasted with a smirk. I left their mansion that night with my dignity in tatters, but my resolve strengthened. If my own family couldn't see my worth, I would have to succeed without them. 2 weeks later, a chance encounter changed everything. While working my shift at a local coffee shop, I served Catherine Wallace, a notoriously successful venture capitalist known for her unconventional investments. When she left her laptop behind, I ran 3 blocks to return it to her. "Most people would have just kept it," she remarked, studying me curiously. "I'm not most people," I replied. That comment led to a conversation, which led to me explaining my business concept. By the end of the day, Catherine had invited me to formally pitch my idea to her firm. Unlike my family, she actually listened. She asked tough, insightful questions that showed she took me seriously. "You've thought this through," she said finally. "It's risky, but the potential return is substantial. I'm interested." Catherine became not just my initial investor, but my mentor. Her belief in me was the first time anyone with business acumen had truly valued my ideas. As I left her office with a check for $50,000, 10 times what I'd asked my family for, I made a promise to myself: I would succeed, and I would never forget who supported me when it mattered and who didn't. For the next 5 years, I maintained minimal contact with my family. Christmas cards, occasional text messages, and brief appearances at mandatory family events were the extent of our interaction. Each time, they asked surface-level questions about my life, but never seemed to truly listen to my answers. Rebecca would inevitably steer the conversation back to her luxurious lifestyle with Lawrence, and my parents would beam with pride at her every word. Little did they know that during these 5 years of relative silence, I was building something extraordinary. Catherine's initial investment and mentorship proved invaluable. My business concept, a digital platform called NexusLink that connected small businesses with resources, tools, and investors, filled a crucial gap in the market. The recession had left countless talented small business owners struggling, and my platform offered them a lifeline while providing investors with carefully vetted opportunities. The early days were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, sleeping on a futon in my tiny office to save on rent. Every penny was reinvested into the business. I hired my first employee 6 months in, Diane, a brilliant programmer who believed in the vision enough to accept equity in lieu of a competitive salary. Together, we refined the platform, addressing bugs and adding features based on user feedback. "You're creating something revolutionary," Catherine told me during one of our monthly check-ins. "But you need to think bigger." She was right. I had been thinking too small, too cautious. With her encouragement, I expanded the scope of NexusLink to include not just resource connections, but comprehensive business development tools, financing options, and an innovative algorithm that matched businesses with ideal investors. The turning point came in our second year when we partnered with Regional First Bank to create a specialized small business loan program through our platform. The program was wildly successful, generating significant revenue while helping hundreds of struggling entrepreneurs. Larger banks took notice, and soon we had partnership offers flooding in. By year 3, NexusLink had grown from a small team of 5 to a robust operation of 60 employees. We moved from our cramped office to an entire floor in a downtown building. Venture capital firms were knocking on our door, but I was selective about investment, maintaining controlling interest and staying true to our mission. That same year, I made a decision that would ultimately change everything. I began quietly investing in other companies. Using the profits from NexusLink, I established Summit Ventures, a private investment firm. With Catherine's guidance, I developed a keen eye for undervalued companies with strong potential. I preferred to remain a silent investor, focusing on the business fundamentals rather than public recognition. This approach paid dividends. While NexusLink continued to thrive as the public face of my success, Summit Ventures became the engine of my growing wealth. Within 2 years, my investment portfolio spanned technology, sustainable energy, healthcare, and real estate. Each successful investment compounded my ability to make the next one. Through it all, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I moved from my studio apartment to a comfortable but not ostentatious condo. I drove a reliable mid-range car. I invested in quality professional clothing, but avoided flashy designer labels. This wasn't just frugality, it was strategic. I'd learned from Catherine that true wealth operates quietly. Meanwhile, through occasional family updates and social media, I watched Rebecca and Lawrence flaunt their wealth at every opportunity. Their mansion was featured in architectural magazines. Rebecca became a fixture in local society pages, always dripping in diamonds and designer clothes. Lawrence expanded Taylor Industries aggressively, making splashy acquisitions and courting media attention. During one rare family dinner, Rebecca couldn't stop talking about their recent yacht purchase and the celebrities they'd entertained on it. My parents hung on every word, clearly living vicariously through their successful daughter. When the conversation briefly turned to me, I mentioned that NexusLink was doing well. "That's nice, dear," my mother said with the same dismissive tone she'd used for my childhood achievements. "Rebecca, tell us more about the charity gala you're chairing." I didn't bother mentioning that NexusLink had recently been valued at $300 million, or that my personal net worth had quietly surpassed $500 million. Let them assume what they wanted. What they also didn't know was that I had begun researching Taylor Industries thoroughly. Lawrence's company maintained a glossy public image, but my network had started revealing concerning information. Despite their aggressive expansion, they were overextended financially. Lawrence had been making increasingly risky business decisions, cutting corners on regulatory compliance and alienating long-term partners with his arrogance. Most significantly, I discovered they were actively seeking major new investors. Taylor Industries needed a substantial capital infusion to fund Lawrence's grandiose expansion plans and shore up areas where they were vulnerable. This information led to my most strategic move yet. Through a series of shell companies and discrete transactions, I began purchasing shares in Taylor Industries. Not enough to trigger public disclosure requirements, but enough to become a significant stakeholder. Over 18 months, as Lawrence remained completely unaware, I acquired nearly 30% of his family company. I also cultivated relationships with other board members and key executives at Taylor Industries, always through intermediaries who had no knowledge of my connection to Lawrence. These connections painted a concerning picture of the company's internal operations, poor management, low employee morale, and an increasing focus on short-term profits over sustainable growth. All the while, my own business empire continued to flourish. NexusLink expanded internationally, with offices in London, Singapore, and São Paulo. Summit Ventures had a portfolio now valued in the billions. I had a growing reputation in business circles as a shrewd but ethical investor, though I still avoided public attention and media profiles. I had built genuine friendships with my executive team and business partners, people like Diane, now my CTO, and Marcus, my chief legal counsel. Unlike the superficial relationships that seemed to characterize Rebecca and Lawrence's social circle, these were people who respected me for my mind and shared values, not my growing bank account. 5 years after being denied a $5,000 loan from my family, I had built a business empire worth billions, all while they remained completely unaware. I wasn't motivated by revenge. Exactly, more by a desire to prove my worth to myself. The family that had never believed in me had become increasingly irrelevant to my daily life. Until, of course, they suddenly decided I was relevant to theirs. The call from my mother came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing acquisition proposals with my executive team. "Miranda, darling. It's been too long," she gushed with unusual warmth. "We've been thinking about you so much lately." I signaled to my team that I needed a moment and stepped into my private office. "Hello, Mother. This is unexpected." "Well, that's what family is for. Unexpected calls just to check in," she said with a laugh that sounded rehearsed. "Your father and I were wondering if you might be free for dinner this weekend. Rebecca and Lawrence will be there too. It's been ages since we've all been together." In the 5 years since my business had taken off, family gatherings had been sparse and mostly initiated by me out of obligation. This sudden interest was suspicious. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Does there need to be an occasion to want to see my daughter?" Her voice had a slight edge now. "We just want to catch up. Hear all about your life." I agreed to the dinner more out of curiosity than family sentiment. After ending the call, I asked my assistant Emily to gather recent information on Taylor Industries. Her report confirmed what I suspected. Lawrence's company was actively courting new investors for a major capital injection. Their financial situation was more precarious than their public image suggested. "Interesting timing," I murmured, connecting the dots. Lawrence likely knew about NexusLink's success. A simple Google search would reveal that much, and probably thought I might be a potential investor. What he didn't know was that I already owned a significant portion of his company through my shell corporations. I decided to play along, curious to see how this would unfold. For the dinner at my parents' home, I chose my outfit carefully, an understated but clearly expensive charcoal gray dress, minimal but fine jewelry, and a quality watch that would be recognizable to someone like Lawrence who prided himself on status symbols. I wanted to signal success without the flashiness that characterized my sister's style. When I arrived at my parents' house, the same modest suburban home where we'd grown up, I noticed Lawrence's Bentley in the driveway alongside Rebecca's Range Rover. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. My mother opened the door, her eyes widening slightly as she took in my appearance. "Miranda, you look different." "It's been a while, Mother," I replied, stepping inside and handing her the bottle of premium wine I'd brought. The living room looked exactly as it had for the past 20 years, down to the faded family photos that featured Rebecca prominently, with me usually at the edges of the frame. My father rose from his armchair, giving me an awkward half-hug. "There she is," he said, as though I'd just stepped out for a moment rather than been essentially estranged for years. Rebecca and Lawrence are in the dining room. Rebecca had aged, I noticed immediately. Not badly, but the signs of stress showed around her eyes and in the tightness of her smile. She wore a designer dress that seemed slightly too formal for a family dinner, her fingers loaded with rings. "Miranda," she exclaimed with exaggerated enthusiasm, air-kissing near my cheeks. "You look amazing. Have you lost weight?" Before I could answer, Lawrence stepped forward, extending his hand as though we were business acquaintances rather than family. "Miranda, good to see you. I hear your little tech company is doing quite well. Nexus Link is exceeding expectations." I replied neutrally, noticing his slight frown at my correction of the company name. Dinner was a masterclass in subtle conversational manipulation. My parents and Rebecca peppered me with questions about my life, but barely listened to my answers before sharing some anecdote about Rebecca and Lawrence's glamorous existence. Lawrence repeatedly steered the conversation toward business topics, dropping names of high-profile investors he knew and vague references to exciting opportunities at Taylor Industries. "The tech sector has been quite profitable lately," he remarked, studying me over his wine glass. "Though, of course, nothing compares to the established industries with proper infrastructure." "Every sector has its advantages," I replied evenly. "Miranda's always been interested in business," my mother said with a dismissive wave. "Remember your little jewelry shop in high school, dear? You were always crafty." Rebecca laughed. "I still have that bracelet you made me. It's in my keepsake box somewhere." I smiled tightly. Nexus Link is a bit different from handmade jewelry. We recently closed our Series D funding round at a valuation that exceeded our projections. A flash of interest crossed Lawrence's face. "Oh? What kind of numbers are we talking about?" I gave a non-committal answer, watching his estimation of me visibly increase. By dessert, his condescension had transformed into calculated charm. As we moved to the living room for coffee, he sat beside me on the sofa. "You know, Miranda, we should talk sometime. Properly. About business opportunities." His voice had dropped to a conspiratorial level. "I'm working on something quite significant at Taylor Industries, looking for the right investors who understand family values." And there it was, the real reason for this sudden family reunion. Lawrence needed investors, and someone had informed him that his sister-in-law's company had money. "We're having an anniversary dinner next Saturday at Ellsworth," Rebecca interjected, naming one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. "You absolutely must come. We've reserved a private room. Very intimate, just family and a couple of Lawrence's key business associates." "I'll check my calendar," I replied, already knowing I would attend, not for family bonding, but because the pieces were falling perfectly into place. After dinner, as I prepared to leave, my father approached me in the hallway. "You're doing well for yourself," he said, and I detected a note of surprise in his voice. "We always worried about you, you know. After that business of yours failed." "Did you?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "Of course. You're our daughter." "Interesting. I don't recall much concern when I was working 3 jobs and living in a studio apartment with black mold." "That was different," he said defensively. "We thought you needed to learn self-reliance." I nodded. I certainly did learn that. My mother hurried over, perhaps sensing the tension. "You will come to Rebecca's anniversary dinner, won't you? It would mean so much to her. To all of us." Looking at their expectant faces, I realized they still didn't see me. Not really. They saw a potential connection to resources, a way to help their golden child's husband. But they would see me very clearly soon enough. I wouldn't miss it, I assured them. During the drive home, I called Catherine to update her on the situation. "So they've suddenly remembered they have another daughter," she remarked dryly. "Just when Lawrence needs investors. How convenient." "It's almost too perfect," I agreed. "What's your plan?" I smiled to myself in the darkness of my car. "I think it's time for Lawrence to learn exactly who he's been dismissing all these years. The next morning, I had my team prepare comprehensive documents on all Taylor Industries holdings, vulnerabilities, and my current ownership stake. I also instructed my financial director to prepare for a potential significant withdrawal of investment. The anniversary dinner would certainly be memorable, though not in the way my family anticipated. Ellsworth was the epitome of old money exclusivity, a restaurant where reservations were typically booked months in advance unless your name carried sufficient weight. The private dining room Lawrence had reserved featured hand-painted murals, crystal chandeliers, and table settings that included actual gold flatware. A bottle of champagne worth several $1,000s chilled in an ice bucket when I arrived. I had deliberately come 15 minutes late, ensuring everyone else would already be seated. I wore a simple black dress that projected understated wealth, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. My hair was styled in a sleek updo, and I wore only 2 pieces of jewelry: diamond stud earrings and my watch, which was worth more than most cars. The maitre d' led me to the private room where my family and 2 other couples, Lawrence's key business associates, were already enjoying appetizers. Conversation paused as I entered, and I noticed Lawrence's quick assessment of my appearance, clearly trying to gauge my financial status from visual cues. "Miranda, finally!" Rebecca exclaimed, rising to greet me. "Everyone, this is my sister." I recognized one of the other couples immediately, Bradford and Elaine Westfield. Bradford was on the board of Taylor Industries and had a reputation for ruthless business tactics. The other couple was introduced as James and Sophia Harrington. James was apparently a potential business partner from London. "Sorry I'm late," I said smoothly. "Last-minute call with our Tokyo office." Lawrence perked up at this. "Tokyo?" I wasn't aware NexusLink had Asian operations. "We opened our 5th international office there last quarter," I replied casually, accepting a glass of champagne from a hovering server. The dinner proceeded with Lawrence clearly working an angle. He positioned himself beside me at the table and spent the first course highlighting Taylor Industries' illustrious history and recent expansions. He was charming and articulate. I had to give him that, but I could see the calculation behind every question he asked about my business. "So, Miranda," he said as the main course was served, "Rebecca tells me you've done quite well with your tech platform. Connecting small businesses, is it?" "Among other things," I replied. "We've diversified considerably." "Fascinating. You know, I've always believed in mentoring promising ventures. Taylor Industries has a long history of strategic partnerships with emerging companies." He lowered his voice confidentially. "Between us, we're preparing to announce a major new initiative. Very exclusive investment opportunity, limited to family and select partners." Across the table, Rebecca was watching our interaction with a mixture of hope and anxiety. My parents, seated nearby, kept glancing over with poorly disguised interest. "Is that so?" I maintained a neutral expression. "What kind of initiative?" Lawrence launched into a carefully rehearsed pitch about expansion into emerging markets, technological innovation, and projected returns. What he conveniently omitted were the company's cash flow problems, the regulatory issues they were facing in 2 states, and the growing dissatisfaction among middle management. "Sounds ambitious," I commented when he finished. "That's the Taylor way," he said with practiced humility. "We think big. Not everyone has the vision or capacity for truly significant ventures, of course." "And what kind of investment are you looking for?" I asked directly. The table fell momentarily silent. Lawrence hadn't expected such a direct question in this setting. He recovered quickly. "For the right partner, we're discussing a minimum of $50 million. But the returns would be substantial." I nodded thoughtfully. "And how are your current liquidity ratios?" I heard there were some concerns after the Withdrew acquisition. His smile faltered slightly. "Nothing significant. Just standard market fluctuations." He wasn't expecting me to have such specific knowledge of his company's operations. Bradford Westfield leaned forward. "You follow Taylor Industries' business dealings closely?" "I follow many companies," I replied. "It's part of my job." Lawrence, clearly wanting to regain control of the conversation, gave a dismissive laugh. Miranda's always been interested in business theory. But there's quite a difference between running a small tech startup and managing a company with Taylor Industries' scope and heritage. My mother nodded in agreement. Miranda's always had big ideas, even as a child. Remember that disastrous first business venture? My father added with a chuckle. After the recession? Lawrence seized the opening. That's the difference between entrepreneurs and true business leaders. Anyone can start something in a bull market, but it takes real acumen to weather downturns. I took a sip of water, keeping my expression neutral. Speaking of downturns, how is Taylor Industries managing the current supply chain disruptions? I heard your manufacturing division in Detroit is running at 60% capacity. Lawrence's smile became fixed. You seem to have some outdated information. Do I? I asked innocently. Rebecca, perhaps sensing the tension, quickly changed the subject to their recent vacation in Bali. The conversation drifted to safer topics through the remainder of the main course. As dessert was being served, Lawrence tried again with a different approach. Miranda, I've been impressed by what little I know about NexusLink's growth. Have you considered taking on strategic investors to accelerate expansion? We're quite selective about our investors, I replied. We look for partners who align with our values and long-term vision. Family makes the best business partners, he said, voice dripping with false warmth. There's a foundation of trust. That was when I decided it was time. Is there? I recall approaching my family for a modest business loan several years ago. $5,000 to be exact. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My parents suddenly became very interested in their desserts. Rebecca shifted in her seat. Lawrence, however, maintained his confident smile. Sometimes the best thing we can do for family is to discourage unrealistic ventures. It comes from a place of care. Does it? I asked quietly. Of course, he continued, warming to his theme. Not everyone is cut out for the business world. It requires a certain pedigree, understanding of established systems. And you believe I lack this pedigree? He laughed, looking around the table as if sharing a joke. Miranda, there's no shame in operating at a different scale. NexusLink is undoubtedly a cute success story. But we're talking about different leagues entirely. Different leagues, I repeated. Exactly. Taylor Industries operates in environments where minimum investments start in the tens of millions. We don't exactly serve. He paused, looking me up and down. Beggars. The word hung in the air. Rebecca gasped softly. My mother closed her eyes briefly. Even Bradford Westfield looked uncomfortable. But I didn't react with anger. Instead, I smiled, folded my napkin carefully, and placed it beside my plate. Would you all excuse me for a moment? I need to make a quick call. I stepped outside the private dining room and called my financial director, Alan. Are the documents ready? I asked. Yes, everything's prepared as you requested. Are you sure about this? Absolutely. Initiate the withdrawal process and send the board notification immediately. Consider it done. I returned to the dining room where an awkward conversation had resumed. All eyes turned to me as I took my seat. Is everything all right? Rebecca asked. Perfect, I replied calmly. I just needed to instruct my financial team to withdraw my investment from Taylor Industries. Lawrence stared at me blankly. What are you talking about? Oh, did I not mention? Summit Ventures, my investment firm, currently holds approximately 30% of Taylor Industries through various subsidiaries and shell corporations. The color drained from Lawrence's face. Bradford Westfield's fork clattered against his plate. That's not possible, Lawrence said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's not only possible, it's fact. I've been gradually acquiring shares for the past 3 years. And as of this phone call, I've initiated the process to divest completely. The silence in the room was absolute. By my team's calculation, the stock will likely drop 60 to 70% on the news. The media will speculate about internal problems. Other investors will follow my lead. Taylor Industries might not recover. You're bluffing, he said, but sweat had appeared on his forehead. I removed my phone from my purse and placed it on the table. Would you like to check your email? The board notification just went out. Your phone should be buzzing any moment now. As if on cue, Lawrence's phone began vibrating in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and visibly paled. "Why?" he whispered. I leaned forward slightly. 7 years ago, I asked my family for a $5,000 loan to rebuild after losing everything. You mocked me, called my business plans unrealistic, and suggested I become an administrative assistant. Tonight, you called me a beggar while trying to secure my investment. The irony is almost poetic, don't you think? Lawrence's phone continued buzzing with incoming calls and messages. Bradford Westfield was already on his own phone, stepping away from the table to speak urgently with someone. $1 billion, I said clearly. That's the approximate value of my stake in Taylor Industries. And that's what I'm withdrawing. The room erupted into chaos as the implications sank in. In the midst of it all, I felt a strange calm. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about finally being seen. If you've ever been underestimated by those who should have believed in you most, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. When we return, I'll share what happened next and how this confrontation changed my family forever. The fallout was more complex than I ever expected. Lawrence lunged for his phone, fingers trembling as he dialed his chief financial officer. Rebecca sat frozen, her face a mask of shock. Bradford Westfield and James Harrington huddled in a corner of the room, speaking in urgent whispers. My parents looked utterly bewildered, struggling to process the revelation that their overlooked daughter controlled a billion-dollar stake in their son-in-law's company. "There must be some misunderstanding," my father finally said, his voice uncertain. "Miranda, what exactly are you saying?" Before I could answer, Lawrence's voice rose as he argued with someone on the phone. "I don't care what time it is in Tokyo. Get them on the line now. We need to stabilize this immediately." Rebecca turned to me, her expression a complex mixture of awe and betrayal. "How is this possible? You never said anything. Would you have believed me if I had?" I asked quietly. She had no answer for that. Lawrence ended his call and approached our table, his previous arrogance replaced by barely controlled panic. "We need to discuss this privately," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Whatever grievance you think you have, this isn't the way to address it." "I disagree," I replied calmly. "I think this is exactly the right venue, with witnesses present. Just like when you humiliated me 7 years ago in your dining room and again tonight." "That was different," he insisted. "I didn't know that I was worth listening to." I finished for him. "That's precisely the problem." My mother reached across the table to grasp my hand. "Darling, whatever Lawrence said, I'm sure he didn't mean to offend. We're family." I gently withdrew my hand from hers. "Family supports each other. Family believes in each other. You've never done either for me." Lawrence's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and swore under his breath. "The board chairman is calling an emergency meeting. Miranda, you have to stop this. You're going to destroy everything." "I'm simply making a business decision," I replied. "Divesting from a company whose leadership I've lost confidence in." Bradford Westfield approached, his expression grave. "Ms. Harrison, if I had known you were the principal behind Summit Crest Holdings and Vertex Capital," he named 2 of my shell companies, "perhaps we could discuss this situation more constructively. There's no need for hasty decisions. It's no longer a decision. It's an action in progress." Lawrence's face contorted with rage and fear. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? This company has been in my family for generations. And you've been running it into the ground," I stated flatly. "Cost-cutting measures that compromise product quality. Regulatory corners cut in the Michigan plant. Hostile work environment complaints buried by your HR department." "Shall I continue?" Rebecca gasped. "Lawrence, what is she talking about?" He ignored her, focusing entirely on me. "Name your price." "Excuse me. To stop this. To reverse the divestment." "Name your price." I studied him for a moment. "It's not about money." "Everything is about money," he insisted. 10% premium on market value. Paid immediately. "The issues with Taylor Industries go far beyond my investment," I explained. "Your leadership style is fundamentally flawed. You prioritize appearance over substance, expansion over sustainability, and your own ego over sound business practices. By now, The other couple, the Harringtons, had quietly gathered their belongings and were making discreet exits. James Harrington paused beside Lawrence, murmured something about reconsidering their position, and quickly departed. My father, finding his voice again, leaned forward. Miranda, surely there's a compromise here. Lawrence has always been very generous to this family. Has he? I asked. Or has he simply enjoyed having all of you indebted to him, dependent on his approval and financial support? Rebecca's eyes widened as if seeing something for the first time. Lawrence's phone rang again. He answered, stepped away, and engaged in a heated conversation, occasionally glancing back at me with a mixture of fury and desperation. My mother wrung her hands. I don't understand. If you've been so successful, why didn't you tell us? Would it have mattered? I asked. You decided who I was years ago, the less capable daughter, the one with unrealistic ambitions. You never once asked about my business with genuine interest. Even tonight, you dismissed Nexus Link as my little tech company. We were proud of you, she insisted weakly. No, you were surprised by me. There's a difference. Lawrence returned, his complexion ashen. The Asian markets have already reacted to the news. Our stock dropped 12% in the first 5 minutes of trading. That's just the beginning, I noted. Rebecca finally found her voice, turning to her husband. Is what Miranda said true? About cutting corners and regulatory issues? Lawrence waved dismissively. Standard business practices. Nothing unusual. That's not what 3 former executives told my investigative team, I countered. They described systematic suppression of safety concerns, particularly in the consumer products division. Rebecca's expression changed from confusion to horror. The baby products line? Lawrence, you promised me those were the safest on the market. I've been recommending them to all my friends with children. For the first time, Lawrence looked genuinely uncomfortable. The issues were minor and have been addressed. After my legal team anonymously reported them to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, I added. The company was quietly forced to implement changes while keeping the problems out of the media. Rebecca stood abruptly. You lied to me. About your business, about the products, about everything. Sit down, Lawrence hissed. You're making a scene. I don't care, she replied, her voice rising. I've spent years defending you to my friends when they called you ruthless and cold. I told them they didn't know the real you. But maybe I don't either. My parents watched this exchange with growing distress. My father attempted to intervene. Let's all calm down and discuss this rationally. There's nothing to discuss, I said. My decision is made. My investment team is already executing the divestment strategy. Lawrence made one last desperate attempt. Miranda, I admit I misjudged you. I spoke thoughtlessly tonight and years ago. But this vendetta will hurt hundreds of innocent employees. Is that what you want? It was a calculated appeal to my conscience, and not entirely without merit. I had considered this aspect carefully. My concern for the employees is precisely why I've structured the divestment to protect the operational divisions while primarily impacting upper management and the board. Additionally, I've established a transition fund for any workers affected by the inevitable restructuring. Bradford Westfield looked at me with new respect. You've thought of everything. That's what successful business leaders do, I replied, echoing Lawrence's earlier condescension. Lawrence's phone rang yet again. This time when he answered, all color drained from his face. He listened for several moments before saying simply, I understand. I'll be there immediately. He ended the call and looked directly at me. The board chairman has called an emergency session. They're invoking the leadership contingency clause. Rebecca frowned. What does that mean? Lawrence didn't take his eyes off me. It means they're considering removing me as CEO. The table fell silent. My mother looked faint. My father reached for his water glass with a trembling hand. You've destroyed me, Lawrence said quietly. No, I corrected him. You did that yourself. I simply revealed the truth. He gathered his things and turned to Rebecca. Are you coming? She hesitated, looking between her husband and me. I need time to think. Something flashed in his eyes, a coldness I suspected Rebecca had seen before in private moments. Without another word, he strode from the room, leaving an uncomfortable silence in his wake. Bradford Westfield approached me again. "Miss Harrison, if you're amenable, I believe the board would be very interested in discussing alternatives to a complete divestment. Perhaps a restructuring with new leadership." "I'll have my team contact you tomorrow," I replied. He nodded and departed, leaving just my immediate family. Rebecca looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. "All these years, you were building an empire while I was just existing in Lawrence's shadow." "We all made our choices," I said. Not unkindly. "Did I?" she asked, her voice small. "Or did I just follow the path everyone expected?" She gathered her purse and stood. "I need some air. This is too much to process." After she left, my parents and I sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "I don't know what to say. We had no idea you were so successful. You never asked." I replied simply, "You never really wanted to know." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "We thought we were protecting you. The business world is so cutthroat. And you were always so sensitive as a child. I needed your support, not your protection. And certainly not your dismissal." "Can you ever forgive us?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't something given in a moment. It's earned over time through changed behavior. Tonight was never really about revenge. It was about finally being seen for who I actually am, not who you decided I was. I settled the astronomical dinner bill. Lawrence had fled without handling it, and stood to leave. I have a lot to deal with tomorrow. Taylor Industries will require careful attention to minimize collateral damage. "Miranda," my father called as I reached the door. "Are you really worth?" "Yes," I answered, knowing the question. "And more. Good night." As I walked to my car, my phone rang. It was Catherine. "I assume from the market alerts blowing up my phone that you went through with it," she said. "It's done," I confirmed. "And how does it feel?" I paused, searching for the right word. "Complicated." She chuckled. "The best revenge usually is. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be interesting." I drove home to my penthouse apartment, one of the few luxuries I'd allowed myself as my wealth grew, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Somewhere out there, Lawrence was fighting for his corporate life. Rebecca was questioning her marriage and life choices. My parents were confronting their failure to see my potential. And I felt not triumphant. Exactly. Vindicated, perhaps. But also strangely hollow. I had finally forced my family to see me, but at what cost? And more importantly, did it actually matter anymore? The financial news the next morning led with the Taylor Industries crisis. Stock had plummeted 43% by closing in Asian markets, and analysts predicted worse when American markets opened. Business channels featured experts speculating about the reasons behind the sudden major shareholder divestment, with theories ranging from hidden financial problems to regulatory investigations. By 8 a.m., my phone was buzzing constantly. My executive team needed direction on how to handle media inquiries about our connection to Taylor Industries. Lawrence had left 7 increasingly desperate voicemails. Rebecca had sent a text asking to meet privately. My parents had called twice. Most surprisingly, I had messages from 4 different Taylor Industries board members requesting urgent conversations. I instructed my assistant to schedule video calls with each of them over the course of the day. "Alan," I said to my financial director during our morning briefing, "what's the latest?" "The board suspended Lawrence as CEO at 2 a.m., he reported. "They've appointed Bradford Westfield as interim chief executive. The stock is expected to drop another 30% when markets open here. And our divestment status? First phase complete. We've sold 8% of our holdings. The remaining stock is scheduled to be liquidated in stages over the next 72 hours, as instructed." I nodded, contemplating my next move. The initial plan had been complete divestment, a clean break that would devastate Taylor Industries and Lawrence's career. But now that the first domino had fallen, I needed to decide if that was truly the best outcome. "Hold the remaining sales temporarily," I instructed. "Let's see how my conversations with the board members go." Throughout the morning, I spoke with each board member individually. All had the same essential message: They wanted me to halt the divestment and consider an alternative arrangement. Lawrence had been removed from day-to-day operations pending a full investigation of the company's practices. They were prepared to offer me a board seat and implement corporate governance reforms. The most enlightening call was with Bradford Westfield. "Ms. Harrison, I want to be completely transparent," he began. "Many of us on the board have been concerned about Lawrence's leadership for some time. His management style became increasingly erratic. And we've been fielding complaints from division heads about unsustainable practices. Yet you did nothing," I observed. He sighed. "The Taylor family name carries significant weight. Lawrence's father built this company into what it is today, and there was institutional reluctance to challenge his son. Until someone forced your hand." "Precisely. Your divestment created the opportunity for necessary change. Now we're asking you to help us rebuild rather than continue the demolition." I was considering his words when my assistant informed me that Lawrence was in the building lobby, demanding to see me. Send him up, I decided, but have security on standby. Lawrence looked nothing like the arrogant man from the previous evening. His expensive suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, his typically perfect hair disheveled. Security escorted him into my office, where he stood staring at the space, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the minimalist, but clearly expensive furniture, the impressive view of the city. "This is quite an operation," he said finally. I had no idea. Clearly. He sank into a chair opposite my desk without being invited. "They suspended me. After 15 years as CEO. Just like that. Actions have consequences." His expression hardened. "Is that what this is about? Teaching me a lesson because I didn't give you a loan years ago. This isn't about the loan. It never was. It's about respect, Lawrence. You never bothered to see me as a person worthy of basic dignity, let alone as a business equal. And now you've destroyed me to prove a point. Your career isn't destroyed unless you allow it to be. The board is open to restructuring rather than removal if you agree to significant changes in how the company operates." He looked up sharply. "You've spoken to the board. All morning. They've made several proposals that I'm considering. So this is a negotiation," he said. A hint of his business acumen resurfacing. "What do you want?" "Systematic change. Ethical business practices. And your acknowledgement that you've been operating from a fundamentally flawed perspective." He leaned forward. "And if I agree to these terms? Then I may consider maintaining a reduced investment position and supporting a controlled transition rather than a complete withdrawal." Lawrence studied me with new eyes, calculating, but with a respect that had never been there before. "You're every bit as ruthless as I am." "No," I corrected him. "I'm strategic and principled. You're just ruthless." Before he could respond, my assistant announced that Rebecca had arrived. I nodded for her to be shown in. Rebecca looked almost as disheveled as Lawrence, though she'd made an effort to maintain appearances. She stopped short when she saw her husband. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said coldly. "Rebecca," he began, rising from his chair. She cut him off with a raised hand. "Not now, Lawrence. I came to speak with my sister." The word sister, spoken with genuine feeling rather than as a mere familial designation, caught my attention. "Lawrence and I were just discussing the future of Taylor Industries," I explained. "Perhaps you should both hear this." Rebecca took the second chair, maintaining distance from her husband. "I've been speaking with the board members," I continued. "They're prepared to implement significant reforms in exchange for stabilizing the company's stock. That would require me to halt further divestment and potentially even maintain a substantial investment position." Lawrence nodded eagerly. "It's the sensible approach. Minimal disruption. Maximum benefit for all parties." "What about the safety issues?" Rebecca interjected. "The regulatory corners cut? The employees treated poorly? Will those be addressed?" Lawrence looked surprised by her questions. I was impressed. "Those would be non-negotiable conditions of any agreement," I assured her. Rebecca turned to her husband. "Did you really hide product safety concerns from me?" "In the baby products division." He squirmed uncomfortably. "The issues were technical and addressed before anything reached the market." "That's not what the reports say," I noted. There were at least 3 incidents that were quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements. Rebecca's face paled. Children were hurt? Minor injuries, Lawrence insisted. Nothing serious. That's not the point. Rebecca's voice rose. You lied to me. You put profits above safety and then used me, your wife, to promote products you knew had problems. I watched this exchange with interest. In all our family gatherings, I'd never seen Rebecca stand up to Lawrence this way. Perhaps you two need to have this conversation privately, I suggested. Rebecca shook her head. No. I've had enough privacy and secrets. For years I've been the smiling corporate wife, believing in Lawrence's integrity while he apparently lied to everyone, including me. She turned to face me directly. I owe you an apology, Miranda. Not just for last night or for the loan years ago, but for everything. For never seeing you clearly. For accepting the family narrative about you without question. Her sincerity caught me off guard. Thank you, I said simply. Lawrence, sensing he was losing control of the situation, tried another approach. Miranda, whatever personal feelings are involved, we're talking about a company that employs thousands of people. Surely there are welfare factors into your decision. Of course it does. That's why any agreement would require significant changes to employee treatment, compensation structures, and corporate culture. My phone buzzed with a message from my assistant. Our parents had arrived unannounced and were asking to see me. This was becoming a family reunion I hadn't planned. Send them in. I instructed, deciding to address all the relationships at once. My parents entered tentatively, looking out of place in my executive office. My mother gasped slightly at seeing Lawrence and Rebecca already there. Miranda, my father began awkwardly, we hope to speak with you privately. Anything you have to say can be said in front of everyone, I replied. We've had enough secrets and selective truths in this family. My mother clutched her purse nervously. We brought something for you. She reached into a tote bag and withdrew a dusty photo album I'd never seen before. We found this in the attic last night. After everything. She placed it on my desk and opened it to reveal page after page of my childhood accomplishments, science fair ribbons, writing awards, academic certificates, carefully preserved alongside photographs. I don't understand, I said, genuinely confused. You kept all this? Of course we did, my father said quietly. You're our daughter. But you never. I trailed off, remembering countless achievements dismissed or overlooked. We thought we were protecting you, my mother explained, echoing her words from the previous night but with more context. Your father's brother was brilliant like you, ambitious, creative, business-minded. He tried to build something significant and failed spectacularly. It destroyed him. He took his own life when you were just a baby. My father nodded solemnly. When we saw those same traits in you, the ambition, the intelligence, we were terrified. We thought discouraging you was protecting you. So you favored Rebecca because she was safer? I asked, pieces falling into place. We didn't see it that way at the time, my mother admitted. But looking back, yes, I suppose we did. Rebecca looked as shocked by this revelation as I was. You never told me any of this. We never told anyone, my father said. It was too painful. The revelation shifted something in my understanding of my childhood, though it didn't erase the years of feeling unseen and unsupported. That explains some things, I acknowledged. But it doesn't justify how you continued to dismiss me well into adulthood. No. My mother agreed. It doesn't. We were wrong, and we realize that now. We're so sorry, Miranda. Lawrence, who had been observing this family drama with growing impatience, attempted to redirect the conversation. While this is all very touching, we still have urgent business matters to resolve. His interruption reminded everyone of the immediate crisis at hand. I looked around at my assembled family, Lawrence desperate to save his position, Rebecca questioning her life choices, my parents attempting to explain years of emotional neglect, and realized I had a significant decision to make. Not just about Taylor Industries and my investment, but about what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted with these people going forward. I need time to consider all aspects of this situation, I announced. Both the business implications and the personal ones. The markets won't wait, Lawrence pressed. Every hour increases the damage. Then perhaps you should have considered that before creating a company culture that required intervention, I replied coolly. I'll announce my decision tomorrow morning. It was a dismissal. And they all recognized it as such. Lawrence left first, already on his phone making calls. Rebecca hesitated. Can we talk later? Just us? She asked. I nodded, surprising myself with the realization that I was open to the conversation. My parents were the last to leave, lingering awkwardly by the door. We are proud of you, Miranda, my father said. We should have told you that long ago. After they left, I sat alone in my office, weighing options and examining my own motivations. The revenge I'd enacted had been satisfying in the moment, but now I needed to decide what came next. Was destroying Lawrence's career and company truly the best outcome? Or was there a path that served justice while allowing for redemption? I called Catherine for perspective. You have them all exactly where you wanted them, she observed after I explained the situation. The question is, what do you actually want now that you're there? It was the right question, and I spent the rest of the day seeking the answer. The next morning, I arranged for the meeting to take place at Nexus Link headquarters rather than at Taylor Industries. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The family would come to me on my territory, where my success was undeniable. I had the meeting set in our main conference room, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The space was deliberately impressive without being ostentatious, modern, sleek, and radiating quiet confidence. Lawrence arrived first, 15 minutes early. Dressed impeccably again, and clearly having rehearsed whatever pitch he planned to deliver. The board members, including Bradford Westfield, arrived next as a group. Rebecca came separately, and I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. My parents were the last to arrive, looking distinctly out of place among the corporate executives. Once everyone was seated, I began without preamble. Thank you all for coming. I've spent considerable time evaluating the situation from all angles, both business and personal. I've reviewed the company finances, operational procedures, and corporate governance structures of Taylor Industries. I've also reflected deeply on what outcome would best serve justice while protecting innocent parties. Lawrence leaned forward slightly, his expression carefully controlled. The board members exchanged glances. My decision is as follows, I continued. I will halt the complete divestment of my Taylor Industries holdings on several non-negotiable conditions. I turned to look directly at Lawrence. First, Lawrence Taylor will step down as CEO. Effective immediately. He started to protest, but Bradford Westfield placed a restraining hand on his arm. Second, Taylor Industries will implement comprehensive ethical business practices, including full regulatory compliance, transparent reporting structures, and improved employee conditions. Third, the company will establish an independent product safety review board with real authority to halt any product launch if concerns are identified. The board members were nodding in agreement. These were reasonable demands that many of them had apparently wanted themselves. Fourth, 25% of company profits for the next 5 years will be directed to a foundation supporting small business entrepreneurs who lack access to traditional funding, particularly women entrepreneurs. This condition raised a few eyebrows, but no one objected. Finally, I said, looking at Lawrence again. You will publicly acknowledge the company's past ethical failures and your personal responsibility for them. Lawrence's jaw tightened. You want me to humiliate myself? I want you to be accountable, I corrected. There's a difference. Bradford Westfield cleared his throat. Speaking for the board, we find these conditions acceptable. Lawrence? All eyes turned to him. After a long moment, he gave a curt nod. Fine. I agree. In exchange, I continued. I will maintain a 20% investment position in Taylor Industries and support a controlled leadership transition. I will take a board seat to ensure compliance with these conditions, but will not seek operational control of the company. Relief visibly swept through the room. The terms were strict but fair, punishment without destruction, accountability without annihilation. After the board members had signed preliminary agreements and departed, only my family remained. Lawrence gathered his documents, his movements stiff with suppressed anger and humiliation. "You could have destroyed me completely," he said quietly. "Yes," I acknowledged. "I could have. Why didn't you?" I considered the question carefully. "Because this isn't about you, Lawrence. It never was. It's about creating something better than what existed before." He studied me for a moment, perhaps seeing me clearly for the first time. Without another word, he left the room. Rebecca remained seated, watching her husband leave without moving to join him. When the door closed behind him, she turned to me. "I filed for separation this morning," she said. "I need time to figure out who I am outside of being Lawrence Taylor's wife." "That's a significant step," I observed. She nodded. "Last night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how different our lives have been. You built something meaningful through your own talent and determination. I just attached myself to someone else's status and called it success." "It's not too late to change course," I told her. "That's what I'm hoping." She hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about going back to school, finishing the degree I abandoned when I married Lawrence." "I think that's an excellent idea." A tentative smile crossed her face, not the practiced social smile I'd seen for years, but something more genuine. "Thank you for not destroying Lawrence completely. I know you could have. We all deserve the chance to evolve," I said. After Rebecca left, my parents and I sat in uncomfortable silence for several moments. Finally, my father spoke. "The way you handled that meeting was impressive. Firm but fair. I learned long ago that business decisions should be strategic, not emotional," I replied. My mother reached across the table hesitantly. "Miranda, we know we can't undo the past. We can't erase years of failing to see you properly. But, if you're willing, we'd like the chance to know the woman you've become." I didn't immediately take her outstretched hand. "Why no? Because I'm successful? Because I've proven my worth with a billion-dollar portfolio?" "No," my father said quietly. "Because watching you in action these past 2 days has made us realize how much we've missed by not truly knowing our daughter. Your success isn't why we want a relationship, it's just what finally opened our eyes to our own failure." There was sincerity in his words that I hadn't expected. I still felt the weight of years of dismissal and overlooked potential, but I also recognized the opportunity for something new. "I'm not ready for family dinners and holiday celebrations," I said honestly. "But I'm open to beginning a different kind of relationship. One based on who we actually are, not who you always assumed I was." Relief flooded their expressions. My mother finally withdrew her hand, respecting the boundaries I'd established. "That's more than we deserve," she acknowledged. After they left, Catherine called for an update. "So you showed mercy," she observed after I explained the resolution. "I showed wisdom," I corrected. Destroying Taylor Industries completely wouldn't serve anyone's interests in the long run. Not the employees, not the market, and ultimately not mine either. "And the family relationships?" I considered the question. "They're evolving. I'm setting clear boundaries, but leaving the door open for something healthier than what existed before." "Sounds like you found the perfect balance between justice and mercy," she noted. "I hope so." 1 year later, the changes were remarkable. Taylor Industries had transformed under new leadership, with Lawrence serving in a reduced capacity that actually better suited his skills. The ethical reforms had initially hurt the bottom line but ultimately strengthened the company's reputation and long-term stability. My investment had recovered its value and then some. Rebecca and Lawrence had finalized their divorce, with Rebecca pursuing her degree in environmental science and discovering a passion for sustainability. She and I met monthly for lunch, still navigating our new relationship as sisters who were getting to know each other as adults, but making genuine progress. My parents had respected my boundaries while consistently demonstrating their desire to build a healthier relationship. We weren't close exactly, but we were communicating honestly for perhaps the first time. As for me, I found that success meant something different than I'd originally thought. It wasn't about proving my worth to people who had dismissed me. It was about creating value aligned with my principles and using my position to open doors for others. I established a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. particularly focusing on women who reminded me of my younger self, talented individuals who lacked only opportunity and someone who believed in them. Watching them succeed brought satisfaction that no revenge ever could. During a private dinner celebrating Nexus Link's 10th anniversary, Catherine raised her glass in a toast. "To the journey," she said. "From $5,000 to $1 billion, and from revenge to redemption." I smiled, clinking my glass against hers. "The money was the easy part," I replied. "Learning what to do with it, that was the real achievement." The true wealth I had discovered wasn't in my investment portfolio or company valuation. It was in finding self-worth that didn't depend on others' validation and building relationships based on genuine respect rather than obligation or advantage. The girl who had once been dismissed as having unrealistic dreams had not only achieved them, but transcended them, creating something more valuable than mere financial success. A life of integrity, purpose, and genuine connection. Have you ever had family members underestimate you, only to prove them wrong later? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this tale of family dynamics and sweet karma resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about relationships transformed by unexpected revelations. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that success is the best revenge, but forgiveness is the ultimate freedom. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Sometimes the most painful family experiences lead to the most powerful growth.